I stood frozen in the doorway of Antonio's, clutching my husband's hand as the woman in the server uniform screamed inches from my face. "I'm a friend of the boss, so get out." Her voice echoed through the elegant dining room I'd booked months ago for our 5th anniversary. Other diners stared as she pointed toward the exit. "This table is reserved for important people. Not nobodies like you." My heart shattered as she grabbed our reservation card, tore it in half, and threw the pieces at my feet. I had no idea this was just the beginning. 3 months of planning had led to this moment. I'm Dee, a 32-year-old marketing coordinator, and I had spent every spare minute organizing what was supposed to be the most romantic night of my husband Jake's and my life together. Antonio's wasn't just any restaurant. It was the most exclusive dining establishment in downtown Portland, the same place where Jake had nervously fumbled with a ring box 5 years earlier, asking me to be his wife. Getting a reservation at Antonio's required calling at exactly 9 in the morning on the first day they opened bookings for the following month. I had set 3 alarms, prepared my credit card information, and practiced my request multiple times. When I finally heard yes, we have availability for 2 on Friday, October 13th at 7:15. I nearly cried with relief. The deposit alone was $200, but I didn't care. This was our 5th anniversary, and after a year of financial struggles and work stress, we both needed something magical. I had saved money for 3 months, skipping lunch twice a week and cutting back on coffee shop visits. The navy blue dress hanging in my closet cost more than I'd spent on clothes in 6 months, but when I saw it in the boutique window, I knew it was perfect. Jake had been working overtime at the construction company, and I wanted him to see me the way he did on our wedding day. The evening started exactly as I'd dreamed. Jake surprised me with a bouquet of white roses, the same flowers from our wedding. Had gotten a haircut and wore the charcoal suit that made his green eyes look incredible. We took a taxi to the restaurant because I wanted to wear heels, and neither of us wanted to worry about parking in the busy downtown area. Antonio's looked even more beautiful than I remembered. Soft, golden light spilled from tall windows onto the sidewalk, and I could see elegant couples dining at tables adorned with crisp white linens and flickering candles. The hostess station was made of polished, dark wood, and fresh orchids decorated every surface. We walked through the heavy glass doors at exactly 7 o'clock, 15 minutes before our reservation time. I had read online that arriving early showed respect for the restaurant's schedule. The hostess, a young woman with auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun, greeted us with a professional smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Antonio's. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under D. Morrison for 7:15, I said, my voice barely containing my excitement. The hostess, whose name tag read Angela, opened a large leather reservation book and began scanning the pages. Her smile faltered slightly as she flipped back and forth between different days. "Morrison, you said? For tonight at 7:15? "That's correct," Jake replied, squeezing my hand reassuringly. Angela checked her computer screen, then returned to the book. She seemed genuinely confused, checking her watch and looking around the restaurant as if searching for guidance. "I'm so sorry, but I'm having trouble locating your reservation. Could you possibly have made it for a different date?" My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and showed her the confirmation email with our reservation number, the date, and the time clearly displayed. "Here's my confirmation," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Angela studied my phone screen carefully, comparing it to her records. "This is very strange. Your confirmation number is legitimate, and I can see that a reservation was made, but..." That's when she appeared. A woman in her late 20s with bleached blonde hair and wearing what looked like a server's uniform marched over to the hostess station with an expression of pure authority. She was shorter than me but carried herself as if she owned the place. "What seems to be the problem here?" she demanded, not addressing us directly but speaking to Angela in a tone that suggested she had every right to interrupt. "Well, Stephanie, I'm just trying to locate this couple's reservation. They have a confirmation, but I can't find them in tonight's book," Angela explained, seeming relieved to have someone else take charge. Stephanie snatched the reservation book from Angela's hands and made a show of examining it thoroughly. She looked at my phone confirmation, then back at the book, shaking her head with exaggerated disappointment. "Oh, this is unfortunate," Stephanie said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. It looks like this table was double booked. I personally made a reservation for some very important VIP guests who specifically requested this exact time slot. But we made our reservation 3 months ago, I protested. Stephanie's expression hardened. I understand your disappointment, but when the restaurant has friends of management requesting tables, we have to prioritize accordingly. These are people who have supported this establishment for years. Jake stepped forward, his protective instincts kicking in. Look, we have a confirmed reservation with a paid deposit. Whatever mistake happened, we should be accommodated. That's when Stephanie's mask completely fell away. Excuse me? Are you questioning the way this restaurant operates? Her voice rose loud enough that nearby diners began turning to stare. I am a personal friend of the boss, and I have full authority to handle these situations. She moved closer to us, invading our personal space in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. Let me be very clear about something. This table is reserved for important people, not nobodies who show up in cheap clothes thinking they deserve special treatment. The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked down at my carefully chosen dress, the one I'd saved for months to buy, and felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. Furthermore, Stephanie continued, her voice growing louder and more aggressive. I can tell just by looking at you that you're the type of people who cause problems. You're probably planning to complain about the prices, demand free drinks, and leave bad reviews no matter what we do. Other diners were now openly staring at our table. Some had their phones out, though I couldn't tell if they were recording or just pretending to text to avoid the awkwardness. I'm going to make this very simple, Stephanie announced, grabbing our reservation card from Angela's hand. This reservation is canceled. With dramatic flair, she tore the card in half and threw the pieces at my feet. Now, I suggest you leave quietly before I have to call security and have you removed for disturbing our other guests. I stood there in shock, feeling smaller and more humiliated than I had ever felt in my life. Jake wrapped his arm around me protectively, and I could feel him trembling with anger. Angela looked horrified but said nothing. The other diners continued staring, some with expressions of sympathy, others with curiosity, as if we were providing free entertainment with their expensive meals. The woman who had destroyed our perfect anniversary stood there with her arms crossed, looking satisfied with her performance. But something about her expression bothered me. There was a smugness there that seemed too practiced, too rehearsed. As Jake gently guided me toward the door, I realized that this humiliation felt intentional, calculated. This wasn't just a reservation mix-up or a power-hungry employee having a bad day. This was something else entirely. We made it halfway to the exit before I stopped walking. Something deep in my gut told me that walking away would be the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of our ruined anniversary, but because this woman was going to do this to someone else. Wait, I whispered to Jake, pulling out my phone. Dee, let's just go home, he said softly. This isn't worth it. But I was already turning around, my thumb hovering over the record button on my phone's camera. Whatever was happening here, I needed to document it. Stephanie was still at the hostess station, now speaking to Angela in hushed but clearly agitated tones. When she noticed us returning, her expression shifted to one of theatrical exasperation. Seriously? I thought I made myself clear. You need to leave immediately. I just want to understand something, I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. You said you're a friend of the boss. How long have you known the owner? Stephanie's eyes narrowed, but she seemed pleased to have an audience for her story. Marcus and I go way back. We practically grew up together. My family has been coming to this restaurant since before it was even called Antonio's. I discreetly started recording, holding my phone at my side. That's interesting, I said. So you've known Marcus Romano for years? Something flickered across Stephanie's face, but she recovered quickly. Of course I know Marcus. He's like a brother to me. In fact, I'm being promoted to manager next month because of our close personal relationship. Angela looked confused. She glanced at Stephanie with an expression I couldn't quite read. And your family has been coming here for years, I continued. Absolutely. My parents had their anniversary dinner here every year. Marcus used to give me free desserts when I was a little girl. Stephanie was warming to her topic now, her voice growing more confident. Actually, this restaurant has special meaning for my family. Marcus' father, the original owner, was my godfather. I basically grew up in this kitchen. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out what looked like an official badge. See this? This is my manager identification. Marcus gave it to me personally last week when he told me I'd be taking over the evening shift. The badge looked official enough, with Antonio's logo and everything, but something about it seemed off. The font didn't quite match the restaurant's other signage, and the plastic looked too new. As a manager, Stephanie continued, I'm actually conducting customer service evaluations tonight. This whole situation has been a test to see how well our staff handles difficult customers. My blood ran cold. She was suggesting that Jake and I were the problem customers in this scenario. In fact, Stephanie said, turning to address the other diners, these two are known scammers who target high-end restaurants. They make fake reservations, cause scenes, and then demand free meals as compensation. Several nearby tables turned to stare at us with expressions of disgust and suspicion. The reservation system was hacked last week, Stephanie announced loudly. We've had multiple incidents of fake bookings from people trying to get free dining experiences. Jake's face was turning red with anger, but I grabbed his arm before he could respond. Something was very wrong here, and I needed to let Stephanie keep talking. That's why I'm requiring all customers to show their invitation, Stephanie said, her confidence growing. Real guests of this establishment receive personal invitations from Marcus himself. She turned back to us with a satisfied smirk. Since you obviously don't have an invitation, and your reservation was clearly fraudulent, I'm going to have to call security. You're trespassing on private property. Actually, I said. What's the owner's full name again? Marcus Romano, of course, Stephanie replied without hesitation. And what did you say this restaurant was called before it became Antonio's? Stephanie hesitated for just a fraction of a second. It was Anthony's. Yeah, Anthony's Italian Bistro. Marcus changed it when he took over from his father. Angela's eyes widened slightly, and she looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. How interesting, I said. And you grew up eating here? Every weekend. Stephanie lied smoothly. I probably know this menu better than anyone. My favorite dish has always been the chicken parmigiana. Marcus makes it exactly the way his grandmother taught him. She was really getting into her story now, gesticulating dramatically as she spoke. In fact, I helped Marcus design the new wine list last month. We spent hours in the cellar choosing the perfect selections. That's how close we are. I noticed that Angela was staring at Stephanie with an expression of complete bewilderment. And Marcus gave you that badge personally? I asked. Just last Thursday, we had lunch together, and he told me how proud he was of my dedication to this place. He said I was like the daughter he never had. Stephanie's story was becoming more elaborate by the minute, but also more desperate. She seemed to be making up details as she went along. The truth is, she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, Marcus has been planning to retire soon, and he's grooming me to take over the entire operation. That's why I have the authority to make decisions about reservations and customer issues. She pulled out her phone and waved it in the air. I could call Marcus right now and have you banned from this restaurant permanently. He trusts my judgment completely when it comes to identifying troublemakers. But I noticed her thumb wasn't actually moving toward any contact information. She was just holding the phone like a prop. You know what? Stephanie announced suddenly. I'm not going to waste any more time on this. Security will be here in 5 minutes to escort you out. She turned to Angela with an expression of authority. Cancel any future reservations under their names. Add them to the prohibited customer list. Angela looked absolutely terrified. She kept glancing between Stephanie and me as if she wanted to say something but was afraid of the consequences. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In all of Stephanie's elaborate storytelling, she had made one crucial error. She had called the restaurant Anthony's instead of Antonio's. But more importantly, I could see in Angela's eyes that she had never seen this woman before in her life. The taxi ride home was silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Jake kept reaching over to squeeze my hand, but I couldn't focus on his comfort. Something was eating at me from the inside. a feeling that what had happened wasn't random or even just about a power-hungry employee. It was nearly midnight when we finally got home to our small apartment in southeast Portland. Jake immediately went to the kitchen to make tea, his way of dealing with stress, while I sat on our couch with my laptop and started typing Antonio's Portland owner into the search engine. The first result was the restaurant's official website, which had a beautiful About Us section featuring a photo of a distinguished-looking man in his mid-40s. Marcus Romano. The caption read, "Third-generation owner of Antonio's Italian restaurant." The description explained how his grandfather had opened the restaurant in 1978. His father had expanded it in the 90s, and Marcus had taken over in 2015 after studying culinary arts in Italy. There was no mention of the restaurant ever being called Anthony's. I clicked through to the restaurant's history page, which had vintage photos dating back to the original opening. The name had always been Antonio's, named after Marcus' grandfather. The photos showed the evolution of the dining room over the decades, but the basic layout and logo had remained consistent. "Maybe I should just let this go," Jake said, bringing me a mug of chamomile tea. It was humiliating, but we can make new anniversary plans. "No," I said, pulling up my phone to review the video I'd recorded. "This isn't about our anniversary anymore." The recording was about 12 minutes long and captured most of Stephanie's increasingly elaborate lies. Watching it back, I noticed details that had escaped me in the moment. The way she touched her nose when she lied. How her eyes shifted left when she was inventing new parts of her story. The slight pause before she corrected herself about the restaurant's former name. But most importantly, I could see Angela's face in the background during several parts of the recording. She looked genuinely confused and frightened, especially when Stephanie claimed to be the new manager. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Marcus Romano Antonio's Portland contact. The restaurant's website had a general email address, but I wanted to find something more direct. That's when I decided to look up Stephanie herself. "What was her name again?" I asked Jake. The hostess called her Stephanie, I think. I started with Facebook, searching for Stephanie plus Portland plus restaurant. Nothing obvious came up, so I tried Instagram with the same terms. That's when I found her. Stephanie Collins, according to her profile, 28 years old, Portland native, and according to her bio, an aspiring actress and performance artist seeking representation. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through her posts. Her Instagram was filled with photos of her in various costumes and characters. There were pictures of her dressed as a nurse, a police officer, a teacher, and yes, several restaurant uniforms from different establishments around the city. But it was the posts from earlier that evening that made my blood run cold. At 9:47 p.m., just 2 hours after our humiliation at Antonio's, Stephanie had posted a selfie in what looked like her car. She was still wearing the server uniform, and her caption read, "Just gave the performance of my life." Method acting is all about commitment to the character. Some people will believe anything if you sell it with enough confidence. The post had 7 likes and 3 comments, all from friends congratulating her on her dedication to the craft. I scrolled further back through her feed and found a pattern that made me feel sick to my stomach. 2 months ago, a photo of her in a different restaurant uniform with the caption, "Studying character motivation tonight." Nothing beats real-world research. 6 weeks ago, another restaurant, another uniform, another cryptic post about immersive character development. 3 weeks ago, a picture of her holding what looked like fake employee badges from various establishments, with the caption, "Props are everything in method acting. Attention to detail separates amateurs from professionals." "Jake," I whispered, "you need to see this." He sat down next to me as I showed him Stephanie's Instagram feed. "Oh my God," he said softly. "She's been doing this to other people." I kept scrolling and found even more disturbing content. Posts about studying the psychology of confrontation and exploring power dynamics in service environments. But the worst discovery was a post from 3 months ago that showed her outside Antonio's with the caption, "Scouting location for upcoming character study. This place looks perfect for what I have in mind." She had been planning this. I clicked on the comments for that post and found exchanges with friends asking about her project. Stephanie had responded vaguely about exploring themes of authority and social dynamics, and promised to share videos of her performances once she was ready. "She's treating people's real pain like entertainment," I said, feeling a mixture of rage and nausea. I spent the next hour going deeper down the rabbit hole. I found reviews on Yelp and Google from other customers at different restaurants describing incidents that sounded exactly like what had happened to us. A couple celebrating their engagement who were thrown out of a steakhouse by a woman claiming to be the manager. A family birthday dinner ruined by someone in a uniform who insisted they were known troublemakers. All of the descriptions matched Stephanie perfectly. But what really got to me was reading the emotional impact these incidents had on the victims. One woman wrote about how the experience had triggered her social anxiety so severely that she hadn't been able to eat at restaurants for months. A man described how his daughter's 16th birthday was ruined by a similar confrontation, and she had cried for days afterward. Stephanie wasn't just playing characters. She was deliberately targeting people during their most important moments and inflicting maximum emotional damage for her own entertainment. I found Marcus Romano's direct email address on a professional networking site and began composing a message. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "I'm going to stop her," I said. I attached the video ID recorded, along with screenshots of Stephanie's Instagram posts, and wrote a detailed account of what had happened. I explained that I wasn't looking for compensation or even an apology. I just wanted to make sure that Stephanie couldn't hurt anyone else. I hit send at 2:37 in the morning and tried to get some sleep. My phone buzzed at 6:45 a.m. with a response from Marcus Romano himself. The subject line read, "This is much worse than you know." Marcus Romano's email was waiting for me when I woke up, and reading it felt like discovering a hidden chapter in a mystery novel I thought I understood. "Dear Miss Morrison," the message began, "I cannot adequately express my horror at what you experienced at my restaurant last night. I have reviewed your video evidence and cross-referenced it with incidents we have been investigating for several months. I believe we are dealing with something far more serious than a simple case of customer harassment." My hands trembled as I continued reading. "The woman in your video is Stephanie Collins, whom I recognize despite her having changed her appearance significantly since I last saw her. She is the daughter of my former business partner, Richard Collins, who embezzled nearly $50,000 from Antonio's 2 years ago before disappearing from Portland." I sat up straighter, my heart beginning to race. Stephanie worked as a hostess at Antonio's for 3 months in early 2023. I was forced to terminate her employment after we discovered she had been stealing cash from customer payments and pocketing tips meant for the waitstaff. When confronted with evidence, she became extremely hostile and made threats against the restaurant and myself personally. Marcus went on to explain that after her termination, Stephanie had been blacklisted from working at any restaurant in the Portland Dining Association. Most establishments in the area shared information about problematic former employees to protect themselves and their customers. "What you have uncovered," Marcus continued, "is evidence of a sophisticated revenge scheme that has been causing damage to restaurants across our city for months." He attached several files to his email. The first was security footage from Antonio's, showing a figure in dark clothing entering through the kitchen delivery entrance at 6:30 p.m. the previous night, more than an hour before Jake and I had arrived. Our kitchen staff thought this person was a delivery driver, but as you can see, she went directly to our employee break room and emerged wearing one of our spare uniforms. The second attachment showed Stephanie hiding in the women's restroom for over 40 minutes, apparently waiting for the right moment to make her appearance. She had clearly studied our operation extensively, Marcus wrote. She knew our uniform style, our reservation system, and even some of our staff members' names. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Marcus explained that he had been receiving complaints from other restaurant owners about a woman matching Stephanie's description who had been causing similar incidents across Portland. She had been using different names and slightly different stories, but the pattern was always the same. Target couples or families during special occasions, claim authority she didn't have, and inflict maximum emotional damage. After receiving your email, I contacted several colleagues who had reported similar incidents. We now believe Stephanie has successfully disrupted at least 15 special dinners over the past 6 months, including 2 engagement celebrations, 3 anniversary dinners, and multiple birthday parties. My stomach turned as I realized the scope of what Stephanie had been doing. Marcus included testimonials from other restaurant owners. Stephanie had cost one establishment over $3,000 in lost revenue when she convinced a large family group that their reservation had been canceled, causing them to leave bad reviews online. Another restaurant had faced threats of legal action after Stephanie, posing as a manager, had allegedly made discriminatory comments to customers. But perhaps most troubling, Marcus wrote, is the evidence we've found of her social media activity. She appears to be documenting these incidents as part of some kind of performance art project, treating real people's pain as entertainment. He had clearly done his own investigation into Stephanie's online presence and found even more damaging content than I had discovered. I have contacted the police, and they are treating this as a case of criminal harassment, theft of services, and potentially fraud. The district attorney's office is reviewing the evidence to determine if additional charges are warranted. Marcus explained that Stephanie's actions had violated multiple laws. By impersonating an employee, she had committed fraud. By deliberately causing emotional distress to customers, she had engaged in harassment. By disrupting business operations, she had interfered with commerce. I am writing to ask for your help, Marcus continued. Your video is the clearest evidence we have of Stephanie's methods and the extent of her deception. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement to the police? He also made a request that surprised me. I would like to invite you to attend a staff meeting this Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. I plan to address this situation with all of our employees and ensure that nothing like this can happen again. Your presence would help our team understand the real impact of what occurred and why we must be vigilant in protecting our guests. I realized that Marcus wasn't just trying to solve a business problem. He genuinely understood that Stephanie's actions had caused real harm to real people, and he wanted to make sure his staff understood that too. The final paragraph of his email made me tear up. Miss Morrison, I know this experience has been traumatic for you and your husband. Please allow me to not only provide you with the anniversary dinner you deserved, but also to express my deep gratitude for your courage in documenting what happened. Your actions will prevent countless other couples and families from experiencing the pain that Stephanie Collins has been inflicting. I called Jake at work and read him the entire email. This is bigger than we thought, he said quietly. She's been doing this to people for months, Jake, targeting them on the most important nights of their lives and destroying those memories for fun. Are you going to the staff meeting? I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to just move on with our lives and let Marcus and the police handle everything. But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger since our humiliation at Antonio's, knew that I needed to see this through. Yes, I said. I'm going to be there when she gets exposed. Marcus had included one final attachment with his email, a photo of the real Antonio's staff taken just the week before. 15 people in matching uniforms, all smiling proudly in front of the restaurant's kitchen. Stephanie Collins was nowhere to be seen. But what struck me most was how happy and professional the real staff looked. These were people who took pride in their work and cared about creating positive experiences for their customers. Stephanie had been impersonating not just an employee, but a member of a team that she had once betrayed and now was actively working to damage. Tuesday morning couldn't come soon enough. Marcus Romano called me personally on Sunday evening to discuss the details of Tuesday's staff meeting, and I could hear the mixture of anger and determination in his voice. I've been running this restaurant for 9 years, he told me, and I have never encountered anything like what Stephanie has been doing. She's not just targeting my business, she's targeting the entire dining community in Portland. He explained that over the weekend, word had spread through the Restaurant Owners Association about the evidence I had provided. 3 more establishments had come forward with similar incidents, and 2 customers had submitted their own video recordings of encounters with Stephanie. The police are treating this as an organized harassment campaign now, Marcus said. Detective Sarah Chen from the Portland Police Bureau will be present at Tuesday's meeting as well. But Marcus had also been doing his own detective work, and what he had discovered was both fascinating and deeply disturbing. I've been analyzing the timing and locations of Stephanie's attacks, he said. She specifically targets couples and families celebrating special occasions, and she always chooses the busiest nights when her disruptions will have the maximum audience. He had created a map showing all the confirmed incidents, and they formed a clear pattern around Portland's most upscale dining areas. Stephanie had been systematically working her way through the city's best restaurants. But here's what really bothers me, Marcus continued. She's not doing this randomly. She's been researching her victims. He had discovered that many of Stephanie's targets had posted about their upcoming celebrations on social media in advance. She had been using their own excitement and anticipation against them. Your anniversary dinner, for example. Did you post anything about your plans beforehand? I thought back and realized I had shared a photo of my new dress on Instagram 2 weeks earlier with a caption about looking forward to a special night out. I had also tagged Antonio's location in a post about making reservations. She's been stalking people online and then showing up to ruin their most important moments, I said, feeling sick. Exactly. And according to the detective, this level of premeditation elevates the charges significantly. Marcus then explained his plan for Tuesday's meeting. I want Stephanie to attend. I've sent out a message to all current and former employees about a mandatory staff meeting regarding restaurant security procedures. Based on her pattern of behavior, I believe she'll show up pretending to be a legitimate employee. The plan was to have all the real staff present so that when Stephanie arrived, her deception would be immediately obvious. Detective Chen would be there as a witness, and I would provide testimony about what had happened to us. I want her to understand the real impact of what she's been doing, Marcus said. Not just the business damage, but the human cost. He had asked several of Stephanie's other victims to provide written statements that he planned to read during the meeting. The testimonials were heartbreaking. One couple described how Stephanie's attack during their engagement celebration had caused the woman to question whether she was good enough for fine dining, leading to months of social anxiety. A father wrote about how his daughter's Sweet 16 party was ruined when Stephanie convinced other diners that their family was trying to dine and dash, causing the teenager to leave in tears and refuse to celebrate her birthday for 2 years afterward. These aren't just isolated incidents, Marcus emphasized. Stephanie has been systematically destroying people's special memories, and she's been enjoying every minute of it. But Marcus had also discovered something that added another layer to the story. I did some research into her father, Richard Collins, my former business partner. It turns out his embezzlement was even more extensive than I initially realized. He didn't just steal money from Antonio's. He was running a sophisticated fraud scheme that affected multiple businesses. Richard Collins had disappeared just days before a federal investigation into his activities was set to begin. He had left behind massive debts and a daughter who apparently blamed Marcus for her father's downfall. Stephanie isn't just a performance artist with poor judgment, Marcus explained. She's been conducting a revenge campaign against me and the entire restaurant industry that she holds responsible for her father's crimes. This revelation reframed everything. Stephanie's attacks weren't random acts of cruelty for entertainment. They were calculated attempts to damage the industry that had exposed her father's criminal behavior. She's been trying to hurt my business by targeting my customers during their most vulnerable moments, Marcus said. But she expanded beyond just Antonio's because she wanted to damage the entire upscale dining scene in Portland. Marcus had also coordinated with other restaurant owners to attend Tuesday's meeting via video conference. They wanted to confront Stephanie collectively about the damage she had caused across the industry. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, Marcus said. She's hurt dozens of innocent people, cost businesses thousands of dollars in lost revenue, and damaged Portland's reputation as a dining destination. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus wanted to make sure that Stephanie's victims had a chance to be heard. You were brave enough to document what happened and fight back, he told me. That courage is going to protect every future customer who might have been her target. As we finalized the details for Tuesday morning, I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't expected. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about accountability and preventing future harm. There's one more thing, Marcus added before we hung up. I've been in contact with the Portland Restaurant Association, and they want to use this case to create new security protocols for the entire industry. Your experience is going to help protect customers across the city. When I told Jake about the conversation, he was amazed by how far-reaching the implications had become. You realize you're not just exposing one person's bad behavior, he said. You're helping to change how restaurants protect their customers. I spent Monday evening preparing my statement for the meeting. I wanted to be clear about not just what had happened to us, but how it had felt to be targeted during such an important moment in our lives. More importantly, I wanted Stephanie to understand that her performance art had real consequences for real people. Tuesday morning couldn't come soon enough. I arrived at Antonio's at 9:45 on Tuesday morning, 15 minutes before the scheduled staff meeting. The restaurant looked different in daylight, more intimate and less intimidating than it had appeared during our nightmare dinner 3 nights earlier. Marcus Romano greeted me personally at the front entrance. He was exactly as I had imagined from his photo, distinguished, warm, and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had built something meaningful with his own hands. "Mrs. Morrison, thank you so much for being here," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your courage is going to make a real difference today." Detective Sarah Chen was already present, a professional woman in her 30s with sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail of her surroundings. She introduced herself and explained that she would be observing the meeting to gather evidence for the criminal case against Stephanie. "Based on our investigation," Detective Chen told me, "Miss Collins is facing charges of fraud, harassment, criminal mischief, and interference with business operations. Your video testimony is crucial evidence." The restaurant's real staff had assembled in the main dining room, 15 people ranging in age from college students to experienced servers who had worked there for years. I recognized Angela, the hostess from Friday night, who looked nervous but relieved to see me. "I'm so sorry about what happened," Angela whispered to me. "I knew something was wrong, but I was scared to say anything." She was so convincing. Marcus had arranged the chairs in a semicircle facing a large wall-mounted screen. He planned to show my video recording to illustrate the seriousness of what had occurred. At exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus began addressing his staff. "Thank you all for coming this morning. We're here to discuss a serious security breach that occurred Friday night and to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again at Antonio's." That's when we heard the front door open. Stephanie Collins walked in wearing a crisp white blouse and black slacks, looking every inch the professional restaurant manager she had pretended to be. Her confidence was remarkable. She strode into the dining room as if she belonged there. "Sorry, I'm a little late," she announced to the room. "Traffic was terrible this morning." The real staff members looked at each other with expressions of confusion. Several whispered among themselves, clearly trying to figure out who this woman was and why she felt comfortable interrupting their meeting. Marcus maintained his composure perfectly. "Please, have a seat," he told Stephanie. "We're just getting started." Stephanie chose a chair in the front row, directly facing Marcus and the presentation screen. She pulled out a small notebook and pen, as if she were preparing to take important notes about restaurant policy. "Now," Marcus continued, "I want to discuss an incident that occurred Friday evening involving a customer harassment situation." He activated the screen and began playing my video recording. The entire room fell silent as they watched Stephanie's performance from 3 nights earlier. On screen, she was screaming at Jake and me, tearing up our reservation, and claiming to be a friend of the boss. I watched Stephanie's face as she realized what was happening. Her confident expression gradually shifted to confusion, then alarm, then panic. But instead of admitting her deception, she doubled down. "This video has been edited," Stephanie announced loudly, standing up from her chair. "This is clearly a fabrication designed to make me look bad." She turned to address the other staff members with an expression of righteous indignation. "I've been working undercover for corporate headquarters, investigating customer service issues. This couple," she pointed at me, "tried to scam the restaurant, and when I exposed their fraud, they created this fake video to retaliate against me." The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. Marcus let her finish her explanation before responding. "That's very interesting, Stephanie. Could you tell us which corporate headquarters sent you?" "Well, obviously the main office, the district management team." "I see. And when did they hire you for this undercover investigation?" Stephanie's eyes darted around the room, looking for support that wasn't coming. "Last month. It was a very confidential assignment. They told me not to discuss it with local management." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And during your investigation, you determined that these customers were scammers?" "Absolutely. Their whole story was fake. They didn't even have a proper invitation from you personally." That's when Marcus delivered the line that would end Stephanie's deception forever. "So, Stephanie, I have just one question for you. Which boss were you friends with? Because I've never seen you before in my life." The silence that followed was deafening. Stephanie's face went through a series of expressions: shock, desperation, anger, and finally resignation. "That's impossible," she said weakly. "We've met dozens of times. You gave me my manager badge personally." Marcus turned to his staff. "Could anyone here tell me if they've ever worked with Stephanie before?" One by one, every staff member shook their head. Angela raised her hand tentatively. "I've never seen her before Friday night," she said quietly. "When she showed up, I thought she was a customer at first. Then she started acting like she worked here, but I was too confused to say anything." Other staff members began speaking up. "She doesn't know any of our procedures," said James, a server who had worked there for 3 years. "She called the restaurant Anthony's instead of Antonio's," added Maria, one of the cooks. "The badge she showed looked fake," said David, the evening manager. "Our real badges have a different design." Detective Chen stepped forward and introduced herself to the room. "Miss Collins, I'm Detective Chen with the Portland Police Bureau. We've been investigating your activities across multiple restaurants in this city." She began reading from a file. "Over the past 6 months, you've impersonated employees at 15 different establishments, harassed dozens of customers, and cost local businesses thousands of dollars in lost revenue." Stephanie's composure finally cracked completely. "You don't understand," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "My father lost everything because of people like this. These fancy restaurants destroyed my family." She gestured wildly around the room. "You all think you're so much better than everyone else. You charge outrageous prices and treat people like garbage if they don't meet your standards." Marcus maintained his calm tone. "Your father embezzled money from this restaurant and others, Stephanie. He destroyed his own family through his criminal actions." "That's not true," she shouted. "You set him up. You and all the other restaurant owners conspired against him because he was trying to change the industry." Detective Chen stepped closer. "Miss Collins, your father is currently wanted by the FBI for multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. His actions had nothing to do with restaurant industry conspiracies." The fight seemed to go out of Stephanie all at once. She sank back into her chair and buried her face in her hands. "I just wanted to make them pay," she whispered. "I wanted to hurt them the way they hurt us." Marcus walked over and knelt down beside her chair. "Stephanie, I understand that you're angry about your father's situation, but innocent people celebrating their anniversaries and birthdays didn't deserve to suffer for his mistakes." He gestured toward me. "This woman and her husband were trying to celebrate 5 years of marriage. They saved money for months to afford this dinner. You destroyed one of the most important nights of their lives." Stephanie looked up at me with red eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time, her voice sounded genuine. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm really sorry." Detective Chen began explaining the charges that would be filed and the legal process that would follow, but I found myself feeling something I hadn't expected. Sympathy for Stephanie. She had hurt a lot of people, including Jake and me, but she was also a young woman whose world had been shattered by her father's crimes, and she had chosen the worst possible way to deal with her pain. Justice was being served, but I also hoped she would get the help she needed to process her anger in healthier ways. The meeting concluded with Marcus announcing new security measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. All staff members would be required to wear updated identification badges, and a verification system would be implemented to confirm employee status. As we left the restaurant, Detective Chen told me that my evidence had been crucial in building a comprehensive case against Stephanie. "Your decision to record what happened and investigate further has protected countless future victims," she said. I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't expected, but also a deeper understanding of how one person's pain can ripple outward to hurt innocent people if it's not addressed properly. Stephanie's story was a tragedy, but it didn't excuse the damage she had caused to so many others. 6 months later, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop reading the final update from Detective Chen about Stephanie Collins' case. The legal proceedings had concluded, and justice had been served in a way that satisfied both the law and my sense of what was right. Stephanie had pleaded guilty to all charges and been sentenced to 200 hours of community service at the Portland Food Bank, supervised probation, and mandatory counseling to address her anger and grief issues. She was also required to pay restitution to the restaurants she had affected and write personal apology letters to every customer whose special occasion she had ruined. I had received my letter from Stephanie 2 weeks earlier, and it was unlike anything I had expected. Dear D, she had written in careful handwriting, I know that no apology can undo the pain I caused you and Jake on your anniversary. I have spent months in counseling trying to understand why I thought destroying other people's happiness would somehow heal my own hurt. What I did to you was cruel, selfish, and unforgivable. You were celebrating 5 years of love and commitment, and I turned one of your most important nights into a nightmare. I am deeply ashamed of my actions and the person I had become. Through my community service at the food bank, I have met people who have lost everything but still find ways to be kind to others. They have taught me that pain is not an excuse for causing more pain. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you cannot. Thank you for having the courage to stop me from hurting other innocent people. Sincerely, Stephanie Collins. The letter had made me cry, not from sadness but from relief. The angry, desperate woman who had screamed at us in Antonios was getting the help she needed to heal from her father's betrayal without passing that pain on to others. Marcus Romano had kept his promise to create positive change from our terrible experience. He had worked with the Portland Restaurant Association to implement new customer protection protocols across the city. Every participating restaurant now had standardized employee identification systems and clear procedures for handling customer disputes. More importantly, Marcus had established the Anniversary Fund, which provided free celebration dinners for couples and families whose special occasions had been disrupted by the Stephanie Collins incidents. 12 families had already benefited from the program, getting to create new positive memories to replace their traumatic ones. Jake and I had finally gotten our perfect anniversary dinner at Antonios 3 months after the original incident. Marcus had personally prepared a 7-course meal featuring dishes from his grandmother's recipes, and the entire staff had made sure our evening was magical from start to finish. But the most meaningful moment came when Angela, the hostess who had been so frightened during our original encounter, pulled me aside as we were leaving. Thank you for not giving up, she told me. After what happened that night, I almost quit working in restaurants entirely. I felt so helpless and scared. But seeing how you fought back and made things better for everyone, it inspired me to stay and help make sure customers always feel safe here. The experience had changed me in ways I never expected. Before that night at Antonios, I had always been the type of person who avoided confrontation and tried to keep the peace even when I was being treated poorly. I had thought that standing up for myself would make me difficult or demanding. But I learned that there's a profound difference between causing unnecessary drama and refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. When I recorded Stephanie's behavior and followed through with reporting her, I wasn't being difficult. I was protecting other innocent people from experiencing the pain that Jake and I had endured. The investigation had revealed that Stephanie had targeted 43 different customers across Portland over 8 months. 43 families, couples, and individuals who had their special occasions destroyed by someone else's unresolved anger. My decision to document what happened and refuse to just let it go had stopped a pattern of abuse that could have continued indefinitely. I started a blog called Customer Dignity Stories, where people could share their experiences with service industry harassment and get advice on how to document and report problematic behavior. The blog had helped dozens of people stand up for themselves and had led to policy changes at restaurants, hotels, and retail establishments across Oregon. Marcus had offered me a consulting position helping restaurants develop better customer protection training for their staff, and I had accepted. It gave me a sense of purpose I had never found in my marketing job. But perhaps the most important lesson I learned was about the power of one person's voice when it's raised for the right reasons. For years, I had believed that my individual actions didn't matter much in the larger world. I thought that speaking up about injustice would just create more conflict without solving anything. The Stephanie Collins case taught me that silence in the face of wrongdoing isn't peacekeeping, it's permission-giving. When I chose to record that confrontation instead of walking away, I wasn't just defending Jake and myself. I was defending every future victim who might have suffered if Stephanie's behavior had gone unchallenged. When I sent that evidence to Marcus, instead of just posting a negative review online, I was choosing justice over revenge. When I attended that staff meeting, instead of letting others handle the situation, I was ensuring that my voice would be heard by the person who needed to hear it most. The experience taught me that being kind doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, and being strong doesn't mean being cruel. True strength comes from using your voice to protect not just yourself but others who might not be able to protect themselves. Jake and I celebrated our 6th anniversary last month at a new restaurant downtown. As we were being seated, I noticed a young woman at the hostess station who seemed nervous about challenging a customer who was being unreasonable about his wait time. Without thinking, I walked over and gently asked if everything was okay. The customer immediately backed down when he realized other people were paying attention to his behavior, and the hostess gave me a grateful smile. Later, she stopped by our table to thank me. Most people just pretend they don't see when customers get aggressive with staff, she said. It means a lot when someone is willing to speak up. I realized that the Stephanie Collins experience had taught me to recognize when my voice could make a difference, and to use it without hesitation. Our anniversary dinner was perfect, not because nothing went wrong, but because Jake and I had learned to appreciate the simple joy of being together in a place where we felt respected and valued. As we walked home hand in hand, I thought about how a night that started as the worst experience of our marriage had ultimately taught us both to value our voices, stand up for our dignity, and protect others who might not be able to protect themselves. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to refuse unacceptable treatment, not just for our own sake, but for everyone who comes after us. Have you ever experienced a situation where you wished you had spoken up but stayed silent instead? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, and I hope my experience encourages you to use your voice when it matters most. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult moments. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their voice matters too. Thank you for listening. And remember that your courage to stand up for what's right can change more lives than you'll ever know.